Okay. If each of you could please introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about what you do, what your role is in this, and then we'll dive into ADM and BiOWiSH and what that partnership looks like. So, Bill, you're our guest. We'll go ahead and start with you.
Thank you. Bill Diederich, BiOWiSH Technologies. I'm the Senior Executive Vice President of Agri-Business within BiOWiSH. So what that means is I manage our agribusiness on a global basis. And our goal is to bring innovative technologies to the agronomy space, and I help facilitate that with a team of very conscientious personnel.
Thank you, Bill. Greg?
Hi, I'm Graig Whitehead. I'm the Director of Biologicals and New Technologies with ADM within the Fertilizer Department. So I really act as the liaison between our bread and butter model of fertilizer, which is nitrogen, phosphate, and potash, commodity trading, risk management, and logistics, and then bringing the value add portfolio, whether that be nitrogen inhibitors or BiOWiSH in this specific case, other biologicals, micronutrients, that entire space onto the traditional fertilizer business that we have.
Thank you. Paul?
Morning, Emily. Paul Sheetz with ADM. My title is Director of Climate Smart Ag Origination, which just means I get a chance, myself and my team, gets a chance to manage and execute some of our regenerative agriculture programs, which pretty much consist of engaging farmers, trying to get them financial incentives for practices or product decisions that ultimately lead to positive environmental impacts. And I get a chance to work with Greg on the fertilizer side and Bill on the partner side to build our programs that support not only this partnership we have between ADM and BiOWiSH, but our overall corporate regenerative agriculture efforts as well.
It's almost like you've rehearsed that so much.
Said it a couple times.
A few times. Okay, Bill, could you help us out? We hear a ton in the biological products space. Could you just talk a little bit about how that space is evolving?
Yeah, absolutely. I first took a look at the biological space within agriculture in the late 1990s. Honestly, I used to manage the world's largest soil lab, and started looking at how do we improve soil health. We're given great fertility recommendations, but how do we get there? And looked at a lot of tools that were there to do that. And what I noticed over that period of time is that the biological space's approach was going to be a difficult win for agriculture from many different parameters. First of all, just the approach technically, but also the approach economically. And so the evolution that you're seeing, that BiOWiSH is truly leading, is that the technical approach was to inoculate soil. Find the best biology you can, grow as much of it as you can, and put it in the soil and hope it grows. Well, we all know that no soil is the same from year to year because you got different climates, you get different management practices. Do I lime this year? Do I not lime this year? There's always a different environment. So is it conducive to that biology that you're trying to put into a foreign space, right? So the ability to do that when there's billions of bacteria or biology in a gram of soil to begin with is a tough task to accomplish, right? So to do that, you had to do it at a very high economic input cost and hope that you got it. That's why you saw for the last 20 years, works here, doesn't work there. How do you put that together? So BiOWiSH's challenge now 10 years ago was to set out and say, how do we get consistent performance across all these management practices and climates at a price that makes sense to a cereal grain farmer? And the way we did that is we took a look at the mode of action and how do we make it deliver. So BiOWiSH takes a different approach. It's an agronomic approach. That's why we're with ADM. We code onto the fertilizer. We look at those fertility applications, and we take a different approach within the space. And I'll talk a little bit more about the mode of action later, but certainly if you look at that and you look at the economics and the shift to the modes of actions that are being done, that's the major shift that you should see and look for in the industry of biologicals.
Thanks, Bill. Could we just roll right into that and start talking about what opportunities there are for farmers as we move into this evolving space?
Yeah, certainly. So if you take forward what I just told you and you look at it and say, what are your goals as a farmer? Well, and what are our challenges? There are so many challenges coming to us in the agricultural space, right? I manage BiOWiSH, but I'm also a farmer. Okay, so what are those spaces that hit me on my farm? First of all, regulatory, all right? What are the challenges that we have in regulatory? Less nitrogen, phosphorus runoff, all the things that we look at and that are challenges. So how do we manage around that? Less land, right? We have less land with higher yield goals to meet the demand. How do we do that? Evolving better competition around the globe. BiOWiSH does business in every continent, and management practices, they're learning from America, right? What we've been doing for 50 years, they're finally starting to listen to. So you got more challenges in every space. So what do? We have to overcome that as American farmers, and we have to do that through technology, right? And how do you see that? It's representative here. These ADM was a commodity broker. Graig is here to say, hey, innovation and what is right for your farm. Graig just mentioned a couple different enhancements. Which one's right for your farm? Which one's right for your yield goals? Which one's right for your economics? That's really where you have to lean on your partners like ADM and the relationship and say, hey, let's help you make the right fertility recommendations for what you're after.
Thank you. So Graig, we'll go to you and let's discuss the ADM BiOWiSH partnership. Let's discuss a little bit of the strategy behind that relationship. Could you talk us through beginning to where we are now to where we hope to be?
Sure. So the strategy start at the very beginning. None of these strategies make any sense at all if it doesn't work at the farm gate. And if it's not consistently performing, providing consistent yields with consistent outcomes, it really does no benefit to us. So that's where BiOWiSH came in, and BiOWiSH did a lot of due diligence over the course of the past decade, and for them to partner with us to commercialize in North America here last year has been really exciting for those reasons. They have that consistency, they've got that proof. We continue to prove it out. We've seen it on our own farmers, our own customers' farms last year, and we'll continue to grow that going forward. What I see in the industry as one of the biggest holdbacks, and kind of when that word biological or biostimulant is said, and everybody kind of takes that deep breath, is that inconsistency that we've seen. And like Bill alluded to, didn't work this year, didn't work in that geography, but we don't understand why. BiOWiSH has proven this out, and this is a really exciting partnership for us here now going forward. The second thing that I want to touch on too is it really requires nothing new at the farm gate. We are applying the product directly onto the granular fertilizer or within the UAN application. There's no new equipment, no new labor, no additional passes required across the field. Anytime we can get ourselves in a scenario like that, it's going to work out well for all parties involved.
Thank you. So we've discussed BiOWiSH's background, the strategy between the partnership. Now, Paul, tell me what the program actually looks like and how I would go about enrolling in that program.
Sure can, Emily. So the majority of our regenerative agriculture programs that we've done in the past 10 years have been really just focused on practices, cover crop adoption, tillage practices, fertilizer efficiency in general without products tied to them. But we know with the goals and the targets that not only we've set for the next 10 to 15 years, but also the goals and targets from markets and downstream customers that include food, fuel, feed, and industrial markets, that we have to get more innovative with products and with technology moving forward to ultimately get to the reductions that we want. And really what we focus on is two main categories. One is carbon stored in the soil from the plant, from the practice, whatever it may be, or becoming more efficient with the emissions that happen above soil. And the one thing that's really interesting about the partnership with BiOWiSH is not only BiOWiSH has done a lot of work over the last 10 years, but we also did our due diligence in trying to identify what our win rate was with farmers, which I don't know if you've shared that yet. Graig, what was our win rate last year? Maybe Bill knows it.
It was 88%.
88%, which is pretty critical on our side as well, because as you guys know, there's several different biologicals out there, and we want to make sure we partner with the company and the product that is ultimately going to lead to success on the farm. But what it does from an environmental component is it allows farmers to either reduce fertilizer and maintain yields, or maintain fertilizer application and increase yields. And that's what's so critical on what we're looking for long-term wise, that we want to add financial incentives tied to those impacts that almost essentially fund the product on its own. But at the end of the day, if they improve that overall efficiency of fertilizer compared to yield, then those environmental impacts may have a commercial opportunity in the future as well. And that's how I really see it playing out here in the future, is we've really focused on practices. We won't ignore practices, but there's a lot of really cool technology that is being created here over the next 7 to 10 years. And we have to make sure we're partnering with the right people, and we're putting it in farmers' hands as well to make sure that it's not only successful but economical to farmers as well when you add the Regen Ag premiums associated with it. If you want more details about what our program specifically looks like, we do have a booth back there. Our whole team is signing up farmers. You can get just the one pager that gives you a little bit more information, or you can sign up right there as well. And if you want more information on Regen Ag as a whole, I believe I'm talking next also.
Emily, can I just follow up to Paul's comment? And I think what's important to understand here is when BiOWiSH started our pathway, it wasn't with the mindset of regenerative ag, right? I mean, we talked about 10 years ago. This wasn't a hot button then, right? So BiOWiSH's goal was simply to produce a tool that you could put into your management practice that, as Greg said, took no habit change on farm, but increased your nutrient use efficiency effectively at a low input cost and helped to have sustainable farming as a result. Really, that was our goal. It just so happens that fits into the program that ADM is putting forth, and innovative program. You know, when we looked at it and said, our technology works for this regenerative ag approach. But when we looked at partners around and went to shows and stuff, it just wasn't right. It wasn't the right fit. I didn't feel personally like the competition was putting out a package on regenerative ag that was meant for farming. I thought it was really meant for just getting carbon credits, and I didn't want to go that path. But when the ADM approach came out, I said, this is really about farming, right? This is farming first and then carbon second. And that's why it's a good fit. And our technology, while not designed for it, is a good fit for the differentiated approach that ADM has taken to the carbon space.
Thank you, Bill. So this is off script a little bit, and I didn't prep you, but
I'm not ready.
You're always ready. So what I would love to ask each of you, and it's something I'm personally interested in, is could you bust one myth in this space for me? What's the most common myth that you hear that you're like, man, that myth has no bearing, it needs to be busted? So, Paul, I'll have you go first.
The least informed person in the space.
Let's bust some myths today. Come on.
I could segue it into Regen Ag some way. Again, I won't be near as informed as Greg or Bill, but the one thing that I hear quite often is sometimes people put biologicals all in the same category, that one is just the same as the other. And then just getting a chance to sit down with both of these guys and them explain the technology associated with BiOWiSH specifically, you can see that there is a significant difference between biologicals that are being offered out there. That's one thing that I've noticed.
Greg?
I would say the single biggest myth is that the statement or the thought that biologicals do not work. They all work, but generally they're sold poorly. They're communicated poorly, and the set of expectations is delivered poorly. That is the single biggest problem. If that can be corrected, if you're utilizing a biological in corn in Illinois when it should be used in strawberries in California, I mean, that needs to be communicated up front, and oftentimes it's not, because we're looking at data in strawberries or tomatoes or almonds or pistachios or whatever on the West Coast and just making the assumption that it's going to parlay to the Midwest, and it doesn't. And that's not fair to the consumer. It's not fair to the farmer. But unfortunately, that it's been very common in the space too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a long list, but I will pick the top one. And it's that biologicals can replace fertilizers. Some people say that, right? And I'm from the fertilizer ag background, given millions of fertilizer recommendations in my life, literally millions of them. And it's crazy to me. And I look at it and say, we're a tool in your toolbox. We're 5% of what you do. You know, I look at us no different than how you look at a micronutrient. or something else you need in order to increase your yield? Or when do you lime, like I said earlier? Biology is just one piece of a tool of what you should have in your full fertility program. And if anybody tells you they can replace your fertility program with a biological, ask them to buy you lunch and then leave.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys.